I'm Lauren, 33 years old, living in a small house on the outskirts of Columbus, Ohio, where life moves slowly, but financial pressure constantly hangs overhead. I work part-time at a local grocery store, earning about $1,800 a month, just enough to cover the bills and take care of my 10-year-old daughter, Lily. Most of the time, I'm a stay-at-home mom, cleaning, cooking, looking after Lily, and trying to make this house feel like a home. Jacob, my husband, is a manager at a logistics company, bringing in $6,000 a month, yet he often complains about the bills, even though I've already cut back on spending. I always believed that if I tried hard enough, Jacob would appreciate this family. He was the man I once thought would protect and cherish me for life, the one I gave my youth and sacrifices to walk alongside. And then our 10th anniversary arrived, and I wanted to prepare a gift with my own hands, something part memory, part flesh and blood from my family. For many nights, I sat at a small wooden desk, carefully wiping the rust off each gear and painstakingly repairing an old watch my father had left me. I remember clearly how his hand rested on mine that day, his deep voice saying, "A watch doesn't just tell time, it holds the time of the people we love." This was the most meaningful gift I had, and I wanted to give it to Jacob. When I boxed it up, I smiled, believing Jacob would understand I had poured my heart into this gift. At the anniversary party, in front of friends and coworkers, I nervously handed Jacob the small box. He opened it, turned the watch over in his hand, then burst out laughing. "Cheap recycled junk, Lauren? You couldn't get anything better for our 10-year anniversary?" His mocking laugh rang out, drawing awkward glances and a few stifled chuckles. I stood still, my face burning, but I only bowed my head and clenched my fists under the table to hold back the tears. The thought raced through me. Does he not understand, or does he just not want to? The pain sliced through like a blade, but I forced a fake smile, telling myself to save face, for both of us. Looking at the empty box in my hand, my father's voice still echoing in my mind, I knew then with painful clarity. The watch was working perfectly, but my marriage was no longer in sync. I thought the humiliation at the anniversary party would be the deepest wound I had to bear, but just days later, I stumbled upon an even more bitter truth. That night, while clearing the dinner table in the kitchen, I heard Jacob's voice drifting in from the porch. He was on the phone with a friend, sounding tired and fed up. "My wife and that kid Lily are just dead weight, always tying me down. If it weren't for appearances, I'd have left long ago." I froze, the glass in my hand trembling as if it might slip. The man I gave my youth to, the father Lily waited for so eagerly, saw us as nothing more than shackles, and yet the next morning, in front of my mother and the neighbors, Jacob smiled warmly, helping her into the house when she came to visit. She's been frail since her heart attack last year. He helped me cook, patted Lily on the head, pretending to be the perfect husband, the devoted father. Watching that scene, my throat tightened. I wanted to scream and expose the lie, or run as far as I could. But Lily's eyes as she ran toward me, hugging my legs and asking innocently, "Mom, will Dad play with me today?" kept me rooted. I knew I couldn't make a rash decision. Leaving would mean Lily losing a piece of her already fragile childhood. She needed her dad, needed a stable home. But staying meant letting her grow up in a house full of pretense. And in that very moment, I began to understand. The biggest battle of my life wasn't with Jacob. It was with the fear that was holding me back. Lily, my daughter, was only 10 years old at the time, but she noticed the change in her father before I did. She started becoming distant. Her bright smile faded. Lily used to run straight into her dad's arms every time he came home, excitedly showing him her drawings, her new doll, or simply just wanting his hand on her head. But now, when Jacob sat down on the carpet, laying out the chessboard to play with her, Lily just stood nearby, quietly clutching her teddy bear to her chest, her eyes staring off into the distance. He called out, "Lily, come here with Daddy." She only shook her head, stepped back toward me, and whispered so softly it barely registered, "No need, Dad." I saw Jacob frown, a flicker of annoyance on his face. Then he turned away and picked up his phone, not bothering to call her again. That night, as I was folding blankets in the bedroom, Lily came in, eyes red. She climbed into bed, slipped her arms around my waist, and whispered, "Mom, I only need you." Her voice trembled, like a 10-year-old forced to grow up too soon, trying to shoulder some unspoken burden with her mother. I held her tightly to my chest, feeling her small shoulders tremble with each quiet sob. In that moment, my heart broke, because my little girl was carrying a weight she never should have had to bear. 4 months later, my growing suspicion found its answer when I discovered Jacob had grown far too close with Charlotte, my best friend, who managed a car dealership, and her 2 kids, Rory and Paige. It was during a dinner at Charlotte's house, the smell of grilled meat filling the warm air. But for me, it felt like a tragic stage play. Jacob pulled out a chair for Charlotte, like it was second nature, his hand grazing her shoulder, and he moved around the room as if this were his home, not the one we were renting. Then he turned to Rory and Paige, opened an expensive gift box, a pair of wireless earbuds for Rory, and name-brand sneakers for Paige, and beamed, "Do you like them, kids? Uncle Jacob picked them out just for you." They giggled and hugged him, while Lily and I sat at the corner of the table, completely ignored. Jacob didn't even ask Lily about the salad she made herself. He barely glanced at it before looking away. I sat there silently, gripping my napkin so tightly that my fingernails left marks in the fabric. Charlotte giggled and said, "Jacob, you're just too thoughtful. Lauren, you're so lucky." And he answered with a mischievous wink, the kind I hadn't seen from him in a long time. Lily sat close beside me, staring at the table where Jacob was lovingly serving food to her kids, while in front of my daughter sat only an empty plate. From that point on, everything at home just got worse. Jacob no longer spent time with us, not even pretending to like before. He left early, came home late, and on weekends he'd disappear with Charlotte and her 2 kids. One evening, I walked into the kitchen with grocery bags, arms sore from my part-time shift, and Jacob was sitting at the dining table, scrolling through his phone without even looking up. "Jacob, could you take Lily to the park one afternoon?" I asked, my voice tired but trying to stay calm, as I set the bags down with the clatter of a milk can. He barely glanced at me and shrugged indifferently. "Maybe later, I'm busy." Charlotte texted, "Rory needs help with soccer drills." His expression was blank, completely devoid of care. His priorities were now all for Charlotte's children, Rory and Paige. Every night he video called them, grinning brightly through the screen. "Hey, Rory, how was soccer today? How do the new shoes feel?" Meanwhile, Lily sat in the corner of the room, holding her old teddy bear, eyes filled with sadness as she watched her dad laughing with someone else. I couldn't hold it in anymore. The anger that had built up over days erupted. "Busy? Busy with Charlotte and her kids again?" I said loudly, my voice trembling with emotion, my hand gripping the bag handle until my knuckles turned white. Jacob snapped his head up, his eyes sharp with irritation. "You're jealous again? Huh, Lauren? Charlotte is just a friend, and Rory needs me. They don't have a dad. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping back with a screech, his face flushed with anger. I stepped closer, looked him straight in the eyes, and said, "They don't have a dad." "Jacob, do you even remember whose dad you are? Lily needs you more than anyone." Jacob shook his head and scoffed with disdain. "You're always like this, selfish and overthinking everything." Then he grabbed his car keys, turned, and slammed the door so hard it rang through the house, leaving me standing there, shaking, feeling like a ghost in my own home. The tension between us now felt like a bomb, with the pin pulled, ready to go off at any moment. But the deepest wound came the day Jacob was getting ready to visit his parents. He stood at the door, well dressed, his suitcase already packed neatly in the car. Lily and I were ready too. But instead, Jacob just said one cold steel-edged sentence: "I'm going alone. You and Lily stay here." He said it without looking back, dragging his suitcase out and slamming the door shut. I was stunned. Lily bit her lip, her eyes glassy with tears, but she held them in and ran silently to her room. I stood on the doorstep, frozen, listening to the engine fade away, along with Jacob's laughter on speakerphone, laughter that wasn't for me, wasn't for our daughter. That afternoon, I picked up my phone, trying to kill time by scrolling through social media. And then my heart sank. Right in front of me was a freshly posted photo. Jacob, Charlotte, and her two kids, Rory and Paige, smiling in front of a house I recognized instantly. It was his parents' home. I saw the balcony where his mother used to hang flower vines, the long wooden table where we all gathered on holidays. But in that picture, there was no place for Lily or me. Jacob stood close beside Charlotte, his hand resting lightly on Rory's shoulder, his smile bright in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. In the comments, their friends wrote, "What a beautiful family!" I froze, my finger trembling on the screen. The betrayal hit like a sharp stab to the chest. A new family? Then what are we? That night, while tidying up Lily's room, I lifted a small pillow and found a colored sheet tucked underneath. On it were two simple stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun, with crayon letters scrawled across. "Mommy and me forever." There was no trace of Jacob. My chest tightened as tears welled up and blurred the edges of the paper. I sank onto the bed, clutching the drawing like it was the only proof left of a real family. Just then, Lily walked in. When she saw me holding the picture and crying, she froze, her lips trembling. Then, without a word, she ran to me, wrapped her tiny arms around me, her cheek pressed to my shoulder, her breath warm on my skin. Even at just 10 years old, Lily saw my unhappiness more clearly than anyone. I held her close, my hand shaking as I stroked her soft hair, but in her eyes there weren't just tears. When she looked up, her big round eyes stared into mine with a seriousness far beyond her age. "Mom," she said, voice small but steady, her hand tightening around mine. "We don't need Dad. I'll always be with you." I was speechless, both heartbroken and suddenly illuminated. The child I'd been trying to protect from pain was the one, giving me the strength to stand up. I felt her strength like a small flame lighting up the darkness inside me. Before I could even reply, Lily reached into her secret drawer and pulled out a thick, old cream envelope. She handed it to me, her fingers still stained with a bit of paint. "Grandma told me to only give this to you when you really needed it. I think now is the time." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a bank statement with my name on it, a key, a savings account, and a handwritten letter in soft, familiar handwriting. My dearest Lauren, if you're reading this, you've probably reached your limit. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you to the very end, but I've prepared for this. I saw the change in Jacob before it was complete. I've left you your father's watch shop, the place where he taught you how to listen to time, along with all the savings we've put aside over the years. Use it to start again. Make your father proud. And remember, sweetheart, you deserve so much more. Mom. I sat in silence, my hand shaking, feeling as if my mother had just been there, placing her hand on my shoulder, whispering comfort. I cried, but this time, not just from pain. It was gratitude. Gratitude for parents who had loved me enough to plan ahead. I don't know how long I cried, only that Lily wrapped her arms around my neck, rested her head on my shoulder, and whispered, "We'll be okay, Mom. You're not alone anymore." And in that very moment, I knew. I was leaving this place. No more hesitation. Not because I'd failed, but because I had found my strength again, through my daughter, and through the mother who had quietly laid a path for me to follow. The next morning, Jacob walked into the kitchen, set his car keys on the table, and dropped a single sentence. "I think it's time you left." Charlotte appeared behind him a few minutes later, her lip curled ever so slightly, as if this house had belonged to her all along. Jacob crossed his arms, leaned against the kitchen counter, and smirked with mocking satisfaction. I looked at him, not surprised, not tearful. The air between us was heavy, like the stillness before a storm. "Charlotte's stronger than you," he said with disdain. "She knows how to live. Unlike you, always clinging to old junk." I set the dish towel down on the table, looked him straight in the eyes, my voice calm and steady, so quiet it made them both freeze. "All right, Jacob, Lily and I will go." My words stunned them both, their mouths hanging open. Charlotte had expected begging or tears. Jacob opened his mouth and closed it again, as if no words would come. I turned and walked toward the stairs. Lily was already standing there, backpack slung over her shoulder, one hand clutching the corner of the drawing that read, "Mommy and me forever." She looked up and grabbed my hand, her eyes unafraid. "We can do this, Mom." We left with only 2 suitcases and a few boxes of memories. All the years of marriage now fit inside those small containers. Without one last glance, I opened the door. My footsteps echoed softly but firmly on the wooden floor. And as the door closed behind me, I knew I had crossed the final line, the one where I left behind endurance and took with me freedom. Lily held my hand the whole way, the warmth of her tiny palm, the only strength I needed to keep walking. I looked at her, those determined eyes, her trembling lips, and I told myself, as long as I have Lily, I can survive anything. My father's old watch shop sat on the corner of a quiet street, under a near bare elm tree. The faded wooden sign hung crookedly. Quinn timepieces, every second is a memory. The door creaked as I pushed it open. The space was small, filled with the smell of aged wood and machine oil. Lily wrinkled her nose, but didn't complain. She just dropped her backpack and rolled up her sleeves. "Let's get started, Mom." We cleaned for 3 straight days. Lily buzzed around, wiping down wooden shelves, giggling as dust clung to her hair. "Do I look like Santa Claus?" she joked, holding up her dusty hands, making me laugh for the first time in weeks. We repainted the walls, hung up Lily's simple drawings, turning the cold shop into a warm little haven. Every night, I relearned how to repair watches from Dad's old notes, my fingers awkwardly twisting a tiny screwdriver, hearing his voice in my head. "Lauren, bring them back to life." Lily sat beside me, watching intently, sometimes pulling out an old watch, winding it up and cheering when the hands started to move. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months, and she laughed with me, her eyes shining like she'd never known heartbreak. I relearned everything from scratch: how to guide the tiniest screws into place, how to apply oil, how to adjust the second hand so it moved in perfect rhythm. My hands were shaky at first, but steadier with each passing day. Gradually, customers started to come. One day, an older man walked in, gray suit, deep voice. I later learned his name was Benjamin, a billionaire with a love for antiques. He brought in a treasured watch from his grandfather, a Patek Philippe, that had long stopped ticking. I worked through the night under the dim desk lamp, carefully fixing every detail. When I handed the watch back, its ticking steady and clear, Benjamin held it in his palm, eyes lit with emotion. "Lauren, you didn't just fix a watch. You gave me back a memory." That day, he paid me 5 times the fee I quoted, left his business card. But more than that, he looked at me with genuine respect. As I tucked the money into the drawer, Lily ran up behind me and hugged me tightly, eyes sparkling. "You did it, Mom." I turned, kissed her forehead, and in that moment, in the old wooden room with sunlight cutting through the dusty window pane, I knew we had begun again. Not with bitterness, but with work-worn hands and a heart no longer afraid. Outside of work, every remaining moment was for her. Holidays with Lily became my lifeline. We cooked pumpkin soup together, curled up on the couch watching cartoons, and created new traditions, just the two of us. Lily giggled when I spilled flour across the table, and I looked at her, thinking, as long as I have you, I have the whole world. But one evening, I scrolled through Jacob's Instagram and felt a sharp sting. He was bragging about his new life in Charlotte's grand home, a brutal reminder he'd erased us completely. There they were, Jacob and Charlotte, beaming at Rory's basketball games, clapping proudly at Paige's school recital, posting beach selfies from family vacations. The captions chilled me with their fakeness. "So proud of our amazing kids," or "Family time is everything," as if they were selling the image of a flawless life. My daughter wasn't mentioned once, as if Lily had never existed in his world. That pierced me. He left me, but Lily was still his daughter. I reminded myself, now I'm writing a new story, mine and hers. Act 5. After our first meeting, Benjamin didn't just return with a second watch. He also introduced me to his wealthy friends. They began walking into the shop, bringing with them ancient timepieces, each one a story, from faded gold Rolexes to vintage Patek Philippe's. I worked under the dim desk lamp, fingers meticulously turning the tiny screwdriver, sometimes staying up past midnight just to finish a piece. Within just 2 months, my little shop, once covered in dust and silence, started echoing with the steady chime of the doorbell, rhythmic like the heartbeat of a machine that had finally awakened. Benjamin introduced me at afternoon teas with collectors. "Lauren doesn't just fix watches," he once said, as I handed back a 1937 Patek Philippe to a wealthy enthusiast. "She gives them back their soul." I only smiled and nodded in thanks, but inside, I was trembling. I had once been mocked for gifting a cheap recycled watch. Now, these very hands were reviving pieces that people were willing to wait weeks for, sometimes even pay 10 times more just to own. Every little payment from a service, every generous tip, I carefully logged, saving every cent. 1 year later, I took Lily to see a small apartment in the city center. White walls, a balcony overlooking a row of oak trees. As we stepped inside, Lily looked up at me. Mom, is this really our home? I nodded and led her through the rooms. For the first time in years, I felt safe in a space where no one could knock on the door and tell me to leave. We repainted the walls in soft cream, hung the Mommy and Me Forever drawing in the living room, placed a reading chair by the window. I bought a floor lamp, the light warm and golden, just like the kitchen that night when Lily held my hand and said, Mom, we can do this. One afternoon in May, I decided to host my first exhibition, Time and Memory, right at my father's old shop. I wiped down every wooden shelf, arranged the watches chronologically, from 19th century pocket watches to World War-era military divers. I sent invitations to all my loyal clients, and of course, Benjamin was the first to arrive, dressed in a simple blue suit, still wearing the watch I had once repaired for him. He stood in the middle of the room, looked around for a while, then came over to me and nodded. You didn't just bring this shop back. You turned it into a living museum. I smiled, adjusted the collar of my blouse, no longer the timid woman once humiliated in that old kitchen. My voice was steady. I want people to see that time isn't just something that passes, it's something that can be preserved. Lily, in a simple blue dress, stood beside me, holding my hand, her eyes shimmering with pride. My life with Lily is truly good now. One quiet morning, as sunlight streamed through the windows of our new apartment, my phone buzzed with a notification from Instagram, a name I hadn't seen in 2 years. Jacob. The message was brief, cold. My birthday's this Saturday. We're having a party at La Belle in Columbus. 8 p.m. sharp. I want to see Lily. No greeting, no warmth, just a dry demand delivered with that same tone, as if I were still the failure he saw me as. I stared at the screen, the coffee cup in my hand, slowly going cold. I was about to delete the message, but something stopped me, maybe curiosity, or a deep desire to let him see who I'd become. That evening, sitting at Lily's little kitchen table, I shared the plan with her. Lily frowned, worried. Mom, why do we have to go? I smiled, pulled out my phone, and opened an email confirmation for a luxury watch worth $20,000, the gift I had prepared for Jacob. He doesn't deserve it, Lily said. I just want to trade it for Grandpa's watch, I replied, my voice laced with pride and nerves. Lily nodded, but I saw it in her eyes. She didn't want to go to that party. But for me, this might be the last time. One last look at the past, to close it, like aligning a misfiring gear one final time. 3 days later, I chose a small dark brown leather box, lined with blue velvet, and placed inside the $20,000 watch. White gold casing, mother-of-pearl face, Italian alligator strap, every detail flawless. On the night of the party, I wore a simple yet elegant black dress, far more refined than the flashy clothes I knew I'd see there. Lily picked out the earrings Mom had left me, just a single small gem. Understated. The restaurant was exactly what I expected. Fake luxury with plastic chandeliers and cheap gold-flecked desserts. I dined at finer places for business. La Belle was just a place trying too hard. The hostess led us to a private room where the party was already in full swing. Jacob stood beside Charlotte, his hand resting on her back like he was showing off a trophy. When he saw me, he froze for a split second. But I noticed. Charlotte sparkled in her loud sequin dress. Rory and Paige flanked her like loyal guards, eyes smug. The table was lined with familiar faces. Charlotte's friend, Linda, who once called me a wonderful mother with a fake smile, and some old acquaintances from when I still lived with Jacob. They looked at me with a mix of curiosity and quiet judgment. Jacob glanced over and flashed a phony grin. Lauren, you came. But dressed like that? You could have tried a little harder. His voice was sweet, but sharp, meant to belittle. I sat quietly at the end of the table, watching the performance unfold. Charlotte gave Jacob a bottle of cologne, and he acted as if she'd gifted him a luxury car. Someone else gave him a gym membership, a tie. Then Rory and Paige stood, smirking, eyes teasing Lily. Dad, Rory said proudly, we saved up to give you this. Paige held up a drawing, an illustration of the three of them, Rory, Paige, and Charlotte. Ironically, Jacob wasn't even in it, but he embraced them, touched. My kids, I love it. Finally, all eyes turned to us, specifically to Lily. I gently touched her hand as a reminder. She took a deep breath, pulled out a carefully wrapped small box from her bag, and placed it on the table. Jacob's smile vanished, his face twisting. What is this? He snapped, voice dripping with disdain. Open it, I said, keeping my tone calm. Instead, he exploded. Lauren, always the same. That cheap dress and now this cheap box? Are you turning my daughter into a low-class woman like you? Just like that junk watch of your father's. He threw the box and Grandpa's watch across the table. It slid, scratching the old glass. Rory and Paige giggled. Charlotte chimed in. Lauren, maybe learn how to give a proper gift. A few guests looked down, uncomfortable, but said nothing. I picked up the watch, calmly brushed off the crumbs, my heart cold, but my voice steady. Funny thing is, this box holds a watch worth $20,000. It was a trade for my father's watch, but you don't deserve it. At that moment, Lily picked up the box and opened it in front of everyone. As the lid lifted and light hit the exquisite face, murmurs rippled through the room. Jacob stammered, Where did you get that? Charlotte snapped, voice sharp. It's got to be fake. Before I could respond, Lily, who had sat silently beside me all night, stood up, her voice clear and unwavering. It's not fake. My mom owns a famous watch store, an apartment downtown, and a Lexus. She did it all without you. The room fell completely silent. Charlotte dropped her fork. The clang echoed in the quiet. Jacob stuttered. No, that's not possible. You're lying. His face had gone pale. Charlotte looked down, hand trembling over her mouth. I placed a hand on Lily's shoulder and squeezed. She turned to me with a brilliant smile and said, Keep the picture, Jacob. But Grandpa's watch. We're taking it back. We walked out, my heels tapping a steady rhythm against the floor. The air outside was freezing, our breath turning to white mist in the night. Act 7. We had just gotten home when my phone buzzed. A strange number, but I knew it was Jacob. When I picked up, his voice was suddenly sweet. Lauren, it's me. I've been thinking. I was wrong to say those things. If you still want to give me the watch, I'm ready to accept it. Let's start over. We're family, aren't we? I nearly laughed out loud. Family? I replied, my voice calm but razor sharp. Family doesn't abandon their wife and child for 2 years, Jacob. You don't want me. You want my success. I hung up, but he didn't stop. My phone kept lighting up with call after call, Jacob's number. When I didn't answer, the texts started flooding in. Lauren, call me. We need to talk, one said. Then another. Can we talk? For Lily. Then he got bolder, the messages longer. I remember the first time you took me to your dad's old watch shop. You said every gear has a reason to exist. You said everyone deserves a chance to be fixed. My life needs fixing. You're so good at it, Maybe you could help. Just a little, right? Every message felt like a page from a book I'd read 1,000 times. Flattery, guilt-tripping, even veiled threats. You can't abandon me. We're family. I read them like I'd read an email from an entitled customer. Every tactic transparent. Jacob hadn't changed. He wasn't sorry. He was still the same selfish Jacob, now just desperate to crawl back into something he never helped build. I blocked him on everything: Instagram, phone number, even email. I called the building security to ensure he couldn't show up and cause trouble. That night, I walked through my apartment, taking in every piece of furniture I'd chosen myself: the soft gray sofa, the gleaming wood table, the city lights twinkling beyond the window. All of it earned through my own sweat and effort, through late nights repairing watches, through days rebuilding a life from nothing. Jacob left me for someone he thought was better, and now he wanted back because I'd made it. How predictable. If he taught me anything, it's that family isn't made of blood. It's made of the people who stay when everything falls apart. Instead of keeping my father's watch, I decided to gift it to Benjamin, the one who saw my talent and helped the shop flourish. One afternoon, I visited his office and placed the gift box on his desk. "Benjamin, this is a thank you gift," I said sincerely. He opened it, his eyes widening at the sight of the old watch, then looked up at me, deeply moved. "Lauren, I'll display it in my collection, as a piece of art." He took my hand, his gaze warm like a father's. I smiled, pride swelling, not for the gift, but because I knew I'd chosen someone who truly valued it. To pass on the values my father taught me, Lily and I began hosting free watch repair classes for kids at the shop. Under the soft golden light, the space was filled with the sound of ticking clocks and children's laughter. Lily, in a tiny apron, stood beside a little boy, patiently showing him how to turn the screwdriver gently, just like my father had taught me. "Be careful, twist it lightly," she said, her tone serious but gentle, her eyes lighting up when the boy cheered at his success. I stood there, eyes shimmering with tears, feeling like time had come full circle. Lily wasn't just my daughter. She was the next link in a legacy passed down from my father to me, and now to her, a legacy of love and perseverance. Watching Lily teach that boy, I saw my father in every movement she made. And I knew we had found our real home, not in walls or furniture, but in each other's hearts. Jacob and Charlotte are now nothing but shadows of the past, powerless to hurt us anymore. Thank you for walking this journey with me and Lily. If our story made you angry, inspired, or simply understood, hit that subscribe button. Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by the people who stand beside you, like Lily, like Benjamin, like you, listening to this story. My father once said, "Time waits for no one, but a good watch will tell your story."